Nicole, thank you for inviting me to your beautiful home today / studio. I can't wait to dive into the work you're doing right now because it's so cool and it's right up my alley. But I want to start at the beginning. When did you discover your interest in art?
Yeah, thank you. I actually, as a child, always loved art. My parents sent me to a painting school when I was really young.
Wow.
I grew up in New York, and it was this really fancy art school that not many kids went to. And I remember hating waking up on Saturday mornings and going to class. But now I look back and so thankful for just the fundamentals that I learned and different techniques. And then I was a graphic design major in college. And so I've sort of just had this thread of visual arts in my life from a young child.
So before your parents enrolled you in this art school, they must have seen some sort
Yeah.
of innate talent. Did you feel that? Did you know that you were maybe better than some of the other kids at it? Or
Yeah, I always loved drawing and, the pictures that would get put up on the fridge at home. And I won a few art contests in elementary school. My mom makes jokes a lot that her other children drew stick figures and I never did.
you bypassed all that.
So yeah, I think there was definitely always a love for art and I was drawn to it, and I think my parents just noticed that.
So you've always had not only sort of this need for a creative outlet, but also you were given those tools, which has to be huge.
Yeah.
So what made you decide in college that you were going to go for graphic art as opposed to any other artistic endeavor?
Yeah, I actually was a pre-med major for 3 years.
What?
And some different things happened in our family. My dad actually passed away when I was 19. And I just sort of was on this path of unknown. I didn't know what to do with my life. And I made a big move across the country and I got a job. I was sort of figuring out what I was going to continue doing in school. And we had a web designer at the job that I took. And I realized that I can make a good living being an artist, which no one had ever told me that when I was younger. It was always that starving artist and don't do that. And I made a big career shift in college and I was the best thing I could have done. So
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so it begs the question, what brought you to Fort Wayne? Because now your work is getting to be pretty Fort Wayne centric, again, which I love so much. But what brought you here and what do you love about it?
Yeah, so in 2008, I moved here for a job that I already had, and we sort of moved operations I was in Sarasota, Florida. We moved here to Fort Wayne. I was a creative director, and I did that job for 12 years. And then when my husband and I got married, it was, we talked about that it was always a dream of mine to run my business full time as a graphic designer. And so that's what I did. I started just, working out of the home, and I was, doing a lot of client work, graphic design, branding, web design, print design. And then I started doing home illustrations, and I was doing them as gifts. People would buy them as holiday gifts. And some friends of mine that own a shop downtown at House to Home.
I was going to say you did their logo.
Yes,
okay.
I did. And they're friends of ours. They took note of the home illustrations and they loved them because they do home decor.
Sure.
And they said, hey, have you ever thought of what you're doing for homes, doing maybe for Fort Wayne, beautiful buildings in Fort Wayne? If you would, we would be interested in selling them. And it was 2020 and I wasn't working very much. And so I just started drawing, and I wasn't sure exactly where to start. Because I'm a digital illustrator, I do a lot of work on my computer, and so it just sort of started unfolding. People really liked what I was doing and they were resonating with it. People love Fort Wayne.
Yes.
They liked Fort Wayne art. And so I just sort of started running with it. And what started with 3 pieces has turned into 20-something Fort Wayne illustrations.
Okay, so you mentioned being a digital illustrator. When did that come to be? I imagine that there was a shift that, you know,
Yeah.
you started and then
Yeah.
there was a shift there. So tell me about
Yeah,
that.
honestly, I've been a graphic designer for 15 plus years now, and I've just gotten so comfortable with the tools on my computer. And, you can have the tools and know how to use them, but there also has to be that sort of artistic, innate
Sure.
bit inside of you to
Mhm.
really like take it to the next level. And I think I just was like, I'm going to use these tools that I know how to use so well and try and do something that's a little bit different. And not going to lie, I like digital illustration because it's not messy. I can do it anywhere I want to do it, whether I'm
Yes.
downstairs with my daughter, while she's playing, or, I'm out and about at a coffee shop. I could still do the same thing everywhere I go. It's nice,
Yeah.
and digital illustration is really becoming a more accepted art in the art world. It's, for a while it was sort of just like, it didn't feel like digital illustrators were as accepted.
Sure.
But now it's becoming very popular and you can do beautiful things with the tools. So yeah.
So tell me a little bit about kind of the logistics of being a digital illustrator. What kind of software do you use? What kind of, I don't know really
Yeah.
what tools exist outside of the computer or the tablet. So
Yeah, so a lot of my pieces, if I use a program called Adobe Illustrator, it helps. It's a drawing software, and honestly, for a while I was just not even using a mouse, just my trackpad, and my fingers like really cramped up, and I would just.
kidding.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a tool called the pen tool, and I would just use that tool, and I would draw and like click and click and click and draw.
Yeah.
And so I would use my computer, use Illustrator, and then my husband was like, "You need an iPad Pro. It has a pencil. You need it." And I was just like so hesitant. I just thought, I have done it this way for so long. Like, what if I get something new and it's just not as good, or I don't like? And so I pulled the plug. I got the iPad Pro, and that's really helped expand what I do. I feel like it gives me a lot more freedom because it has more of that traditional like drawing. So once you get past the sort of the difference with drawing on a screen as drawing on a paper, it doesn't have that same texture and sound. And and so on my iPad, I can use Illustrator as well. And I use also a program called Procreate, which is made for artists. And so there are tons of sort of digital replication of media. So there's watercolor brushes, and there's different acrylics and charcoal. And so you could sort of just use all the techniques I've learned as a kid throughout my whole life, and now they're at my fingertips all at once in this one place. Don't have to wash my brushes. And and it gives freedom for experimenting with new things. There's times I do stuff and I'm like, no, I didn't like that, and then there's other times where I'm like, oh, I feel like this would be really valuable for me to work on and practice, different types of brushes. And I tend to work a lot in layers. And so if I have a layer that's on the bottom, that's a base, and I'm about to add more to my piece, if I do it on a new layer and I don't like it, it doesn't ruin what I've already done. And so, that definitely, you can't do that when you're painting or drawing. I mean, I guess you could, but you'd really have to creatively come up with a way to like fix your mistake, And so, and I love that. And, at this stage in what I'm doing, it just makes sense because it helps me to be productive. I don't get as frustrated as maybe I would if everything I was doing was turning out to be a mistake.
Yes. What is the best part of what you do?
Honestly, getting to be home and raise my daughter and still do what I love and be a part of my family, be able to work at home, not have to run around and don't miss anything. And I'm doing what I love. And my family's so supportive, so when there's in-person events and I have to be away for so many hours, there's just a lot of stepping in and helping and supporting, and I just love that. I love when people talk to me on social media, and I love it even more when I get to meet them in person. Like, it's really fun, because people who share what I do are the reason why I can still do what I do, and to be able to do something that I love and make money is a very unique and special opportunity. I don't take it for granted. I work really hard to make new stuff all the time so that I never feel like I've done what I needed to do and I can move on. Like, I love creating new stuff and sharing that, and yeah, I did not imagine that this is where it would end up, and it's really special to me.
Well, it sounds like it's kind of the dream.
Yeah.
You're in a really good place. So I love your work. It's not only really cool and visually appealing, but there is heart there. So I hope that you continue with all of your Fort Wayne work and with whatever else. Please keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for having me, and best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Arts in Focus on PBS Fort Wayne is funded in part by the Our Foundation and the Community Foundation of Greater Fort Wayne.